Hello again. This is another video where we're going to talk about the fifth tool of my creative financing toolbox, the fifth and final one for now, called buying subject to the mortgage. Now this is my fifth one primarily because out of all five of these, this is the one I use the least. I still think it's in certain circumstances can be a good tool. I think it's one that's taught a lot and maybe not taught in the same way that I would suggest using it. So let me go through and first of all explain to you what this is, buying subject to the mortgage, and then maybe how, just a simple example of how you could use this in your business. The main benefit being using existing mortgages without having to go to the bank and get a new mortgage. So let me explain it again with my normal diagram. We've got you, the entrepreneur, who's looking to solve somebody's problem in exchange for making a profit. And we have the owner. And this owner is not so happy because they own a house, but they've had some sort of life situation. And then the life situation has caused them to lose their job or have a health problem. They have to move, go take care of family. Something's happened. And their problem is that they're still chained to this house, which maybe it needs some work, maybe some things are going on with it. But then they also have a note and a mortgage or a deed of trust that is outstanding on the property. And so for them to move out and vacate the property, they still have a payment on, and this is my example, I'm going to say is an $80,000 mortgage on the same house we did in the last example. This is a $130,000 house, ARV, something like that. And so they have this issue. They do have some equity in the property, and so they are nervous about walking away from it, but they are an imminent default. They don't have any income at the moment. They are not sure that they can put a few $1,000s into the property to get it rented out, do the work it needs to be to get it rented out. So they're kind of stuck in a hard place here. And if they don't do something pretty quickly, then they're going to miss a payment with the bank. So they're in sort of a financial hardship situation. And you're going to run into lots of situations like this that could be hypothetically. There's a divorce and one spouse gets the property and he or she can't afford the property, and they could before with two people, and now that's why they are in that situation. It might be they lost the job or they got a new job and it's half the income. They might need to move out of town, and so there's plenty of life situations that cause this. And the common theme that I would say that leans me towards a subject to tool instead of a lease option, which I would actually prefer in many cases a lease option, even though there's some even more complications and things you have to deal with, is because you're actually, in this case, you're actually going to be buying the property and being responsible for a debt. But what differentiates between this subject to and a lease option is that typically the owner is in a little bit more of a financial hardship situation, and I wouldn't want to do a lease option there. I don't want to let somebody else own the property and be responsible for making payments if I think they're in a financial hardship situation. So I want to take a little bit more control of the situation. So here's what I would propose to this is an example that I might propose to this owner. They might say, I don't want to give the property away, but I'm about to lose everything. I don't want to lose everything. So do you have any solutions? And I say, well, I can't pay you full price. I can't pay you $130. I'm in this. I have to make a profit. But what if I could pay you $100,000? And here's what I could do. We would have a closing, and you will deed me the property. So given the situation, I have to get a deed to the property. You have to sell it to me. But here's the thing that most people don't realize. And for all practical purposes, in most closings, you have a deed, and when you get a deed to the property, you pay off their existing mortgage. And why do we do that? Because that's the traditional way of doing it, and also mortgages have a due on sale clause. Almost all mortgages today have a due on sale clause saying something to the effect of, if you transfer any interest in this property, then we have the right. That mean we will. We have the right to call the loan due. And they built those due on sale clauses in because in the past people would just transfer the property and let other people make payments on it without them knowing about it, and they wouldn't refinance, and they would continue to, in a rising interest rate climate, they continue to have low interest rates outstanding, even though and that people wouldn't pay them off. So they lobbied the federal government, and they allowed them to have a due on sale clause in their mortgages. So that's why most people don't. But this situation is a little bit different. This is a situation where there's an imminent default. They're about to go in foreclosure. And so what I propose to them, I would say I'll be completely transparent. And that's going to be the theme here. And what I don't like about a lot of the other subject to transactions I hear about is that we're going to be completely transparent with all parties, with the owner, with the bank. And then of course I know what's going on too. And I'm going to tell the owner, I will buy your house for $100,000. I'm going to assume responsibility for paying your note. I am not going to formally put it in my name though, unless the bank. And if the bank would do that, I might consider it. But most banks, especially the big institutional mortgages, national mortgage companies, wouldn't allow me to put the loan in my name. But what I'm going to tell them, I'm going to assume responsibility. I'm going to start paying your mortgage at $525 starting next month, so that you no longer have the burden of making that payment. Plus, I'm going to be responsible for taxes and insurance. I own the property, so I have to pay taxes and insurance, maintenance, everything else. But we are going to get this deed. You're going to deed me the property subject to this mortgage that's outstanding on the property. So the mortgage will still be in your name. That's the difference. Now, who would do that? Most people would not do that, but somebody who is motivated and about to lose the house might consider something like that. And especially when I explain the rest of the situation, I say, you do have some equity in the house, and here's a way I might be able to save. I will be able to save some of your equity. Is that I will also pay you $20,000 sometime in the future. I'll give you a promissory note. So I'm going to give them, just like you give a bank a promissory note, I'm going to give the seller a promissory note for $20,000 and a second mortgage. We'll record that against the property. So they still have some control over the property. And you could even put in that mortgage that if I defaulted on payments on the first, then I'm in default to my second mortgage as well. It could give them a little bit more control over the situation. And to make them feel a little bit more secure about the fact that they still have a debt in their name and they don't have the deed. That's, in a normal circumstance, that would be a problem. But they're motivated and want to look for some alternative solutions that can happen quickly. And so I said, I'll pay your note and mortgage. I'll give you $20,000 within 10 years. There's 0% interest, 0 payment. So that's just a note for one payment of $20,000 sometime in the future within 10 years. So that's what I give them. There's going to be no cash up front other than me paying their mortgage, and $100,000 is the total price. And so I'm assuming the $80,000, assuming payments on the $80,000, but it's not formally assumed, not in my name. But I'll start paying that loan down. And so if I pay it off 5 years from now and the loan has been paid down, I'll benefit from that equity that's been built up in the property, me as the owner of the property. And so that's a key distinction here. The other thing I would do at closing is I would personally send a certified letter before closing to the bank telling them that me, this entrepreneur, this address, this phone number, this name, will be getting the deed to the property subject to the mortgage. We're giving you notice of that. We send a certified letter with a return receipt. And I want somebody at the bank to sign it and send it back. And if they're going to have a problem with that, if they're going to say, no, we'll call the loan due, I want to know about it right now. And then we can discuss it and say, okay, well, it's about to go into default. Do you want to talk about some other options? Could we put this in our name? Could we get a letter to let us make payments on it and you not call the loan due for a period of time? I mean, the big deal is most banks want to get their payments. They don't want to have this property back. And so what's probably going to happen, and the few times that I had done this in the past, is that I have sent them a letter and I got the return receipt back signed by somebody at their customer service department, and they never called the loan due. So many times, especially with the bigger institutional loans, you give them notice, you change the insurance to your name, they find out about that because you have to put insurance, additionally insured, in the bank's name as well. So there's no hiding this at all. But they could call the loan due, and the seller needs to understand the risk of that they could call the loan due. And we're all aware of that risk, and that in the future, if they call the loan due, we're going to have to scramble and figure something out. But we're all agreeing that it's worth the risk given the circumstances. It's worth it for me because I might have a profit on the back end. If I rent it out for $9.50 per month, and this is very similar numbers to our credit partner video that I just did, $9.50 per month, I might make, after all my expenses, let's say it was $525, let's say $300 in expenses, so $850, $750, $650 left over, and I have $525 payment. So I'm making $125 a month. Not a really big number, but enough for now, and I'm amortizing the loan some. And then if I could get my tenant to buy it in, let's say, 3 to 5 years, I have to pay, I have to pay the seller $20,000, but let's say I sold it for $130,000 5 years from now. And that's possible. It gives me a lot of time to work on that. I've got to pay the seller $20,000. And let's say my loan's paid down to $75,000. And so that's 110 minus 75, that's a $35,000 profit. Let me make sure I did those numbers right. 110 minus 70, that's 35,000. So on the back end of this deal, I did not put any money down. I used my creativity and my building trust with the seller, disclosing to the bank, using my creativity, using an existing mortgage, not going to the bank and getting a note in my name. I was able to make $125 a month and a $35,000 profit on the back end. And then there might be some other expenses in the meantime. If the heat and air goes out, I'm responsible for that. I am the owner of the property. But there's some benefits, and so the long run, if this was in a rising market, if rents were going up, I would benefit by getting any kind of increases in rents. If the price of the house went up to 150 instead of 130 over 5 to 10 years, I would benefit from that. And so I'm benefiting from ownership, but we're getting creative with how to buy the property. So I hope that helps you a little bit with subject 2. That's a big subject. That's something we could talk a lot about. So feel free to ask more questions. This is just my little technique of using it. I'm not big. I know there's other techniques, other people who teach. Just because this loan is not in your name, then you can be a little bit more cavalier and take risks that you wouldn't normally take by borrowing money. And my take is the exact opposite. Is you are in fact even more. You have to be even more careful with this debt than you would when you're borrowing it yourself, because this is somebody else's debt. It's in their name. And the reality is, if you took a cavalier approach and said, well, this isn't my loan, I can be more aggressive, I can go wholesale it to somebody else and let them take over payments on it and put the deed in their name and do some of the other things like that, then if whoever stops making payments on that in the future is coming back to you, because you're the person who sat with that owner, built the trust with them, let them know what you're going to try to solve their problem. No matter what kind of disclosures you signed with them and whatever you did, if something happened in the future, you are responsible for it. And if you ever ever took you to court, willing to bet you'd be responsible for it, because this poor homeowner who was in a financial distress trusted you, and then you went off and didn't make their mortgage payment, and now they're in trouble, and you're going to be the one who's accountable, whether you sign disclosures with everybody or not. And so my main point here is, tread carefully with these, but there is a way to have a win-win situation for everybody. The bank keeps their loan getting paid. They don't have to go into foreclosure. This person avoids a foreclosure, salvages some of their equity if there is equity in the deal, and you are able to buy it without a down payment, with a safe amount of equity or a safe payment on the house, and make a $35,000 profit on the back end with your effort and your ingenuity and your creativity. So I hope that helps. There's a little bit longer video here, but feel free to ask me questions, and we'll put all this together by showing you a lot more case studies going forward in the rest of the class. So see you soon.